This episode of Nos Arietes is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Arietes since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest.
Hi, I'm Will Bruin, and I was just recognized as a Seattle Sounders legend. Now I get to do voice reads for the Sounder at Heart podcast network.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
A save by Fry! The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners!
Here comes Ray Diaz through the middle to crown it for Seattle! And now they truly can start the celebrations. It's the Sounders MLS Cup.
Nico Lodero leaves absolutely no doubt! The Sounders rule the region!
Seattle Sounders is campeón!
It's gone! Darren's gone! Finally!
This feels fucking awesome.
This is a tiny dog.
We want to win. It's Seattle Sounders, bro.
Porter says cheated.
You know, what was the thought process in terms of who you decided to use and who you didn't?
Ever since Sounder Hart wrote a commentary that we didn't take Open Cup seriously.
Welcome to another episode of Nos Arietes, sponsored by Full Pull Wines and our subscribers. We're recording on Thursday, September 19th, 2024. I am your host, Jeremiah Shan. I am joined by my co-host, Aaron Campo, as well as our engineer, Lickett. Just when it seemed like the Sounders were getting on a roll, they took a bit of a gut punch when they surrendered a late equalizer to the San Jose Earthquakes on Wednesday. After coming back from 1-0 down to take a 2-1 lead, the Sounders seemed well on their way to dispatching the league's worst team. But a late lapse cost them 2 points when Paul Marie snuck behind Alex Rodon to poke home the equalizer in the 89th minute. It's the fourth time this year the Sounders have conceded an equalizer at home in the 88th minute or later, costing them 8 points this year. That happens to be the exact gap between them and first place LA Galaxy. These two drop points sting a bit more, not just because the Earthquakes are so bad or because they've gone winless against them in their last 6, but because it turns the final 4 games of the season into a much more stressful stretch than it needs to be. Instead of finishing the night tied for 3rd, they're in 5th and only 4 points ahead of 8th, which would mean they have to be in the play-in game. They've now got 4 games against likely playoff teams to close out the season. Aaron, what do you make of all this?
I don't know yet. We talked on the last show about how I don't think we said that these points were a foregone conclusion, but I think that was kind of the subtext.
Yeah.
At no point did I think the Sounders weren't going to win that game last night, really until I would say a minute left in stoppage time. Like I thought they were still going to get a winner late. And it's a baffling result. It's the kind of game that if it happens in a typical Sounders season where they're not, chasing, they're not trying to make up a bunch of lost ground, they're towards the top of the table, you just say, yeah, that happens. Sometimes you play the Earthquakes in September on a Wednesday night at home, and that, they score a late goal and you only get a point out of a game that you were much better in. But I think with the larger context of the season, it just makes that harder to say. Like that's just a more difficult sell, I think. And it's frustrating. I don't think there's any real takeaway from the game in terms of Brian Schmetzer lost the game when he didn't rotate, or the Sounders have, serious mental issues where, they're just incapable of holding leads. I just think it was a very MLS kind of game and a very MLS kind of result. But I also don't blame anybody for wanting to find patterns and make it part of a bigger narrative, because it's just been that kind of year where they give you a lot of reasons to want to do that.
Yeah. Here's a crazy stat for you. I mentioned, I believe, earlier in the intro that the Sounders haven't beaten the Earthquakes in 6 games. So you got to go back to 2021, the last time the Sounders beat the Earthquakes. What's even crazier is the last time the Sounders beat the Earthquakes at home was in 2020. They actually did it twice in 2020. They beat them on an aggregate score of 11-2. But to find the last time they beat the Earthquakes at home in front of fans, you got to go all the way back to October 28th of 2018. That was a game. I don't know if you remember this. It was the season finale that year. Raul Ruidiaz scored a very late winner to send the Sounders up the table. I think they've ended up finishing second. That was kind of a wild decision day game. But the Earthquakes have not been particularly good since then. They weren't good then. This is the most baffling sort of series of results that, you know, you can kind of understand. Like the Sounders have this long winless run against the Timbers at home that you can kind of understand. They're a decent team. They have this long winless run against LAFC. They're a very good team. It feels like LAFC just has the Sounders number. I don't know that I can logic my way into understanding why the Sounders struggle so much against the Earthquakes, because it just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. It's not like the Earthquakes have a stylistic DNA where no matter who the coach is, no matter who the players are. Yeah. I mean, the 2018 Earthquakes were a pretty standard, I think, bad kick and rush kind of MLS team.
Yeah.
Then they had the Matias Almeida style. Now they're much more of a, you know, standard sort of, we'll press you, but not too hard. We'll look for counters, but we can also score out of possession, like very bog standard MLS team. That's a lot different than a bog standard MLS team 6 years ago. They've gone through tons of different players, coaches, tactical permutations. And I think I've just landed on, this is just a weird fluke, you know? Because I think it's the most plausible explanation. Like,
yeah,
I don't think that Dave Caval has put a hex on the Sounders. You know,
Dave Caval. There's a blast from the past. That's the former Earthquakes president, who is now famously the president of the Oakland A's, who has near and dear to my heart, of course.
Yeah, real nasty piece of trash.
Yeah.
That guy. But yeah, I can't think of another explanation other than they're just getting fluky results against the Earthquakes. It's very baffling. I don't understand it like you. If somebody can give me a better explanation than that, that's not just vibes based.
Well,
I'd love to hear it, but
yeah, I mean, I suppose there is I don't know if this is too vibey, but I would say there's one plausible explanation, and it's simply that, and I don't even know that this is true, frankly. I don't know that the Earthquakes view the Sounders as a rival, but I suppose if they do, and I know that there are sort of like, this is a plausible rival, so it might be the case that maybe they get really up for playing the Sounders, and the Sounders just routinely overlook them. But frankly, the Sounders probably routinely overlook a lot of teams.
Right.
Right. Every team is not a rival. And I don't think the Sounders look at the Earthquakes as any more of a rival than, I don't know, the Rapids. And they dominate the Rapids, and the Rapids have actually been good during some of this time. So it sort of does defy logic that they've had all these struggles against the Earthquakes. But let's talk about the struggles in this game. Both goals, I think we can say, came from defensive errors.
Yep.
The first one was pretty egregious. It is, first of all, it starts with Yeimar putting a pointless, like I guess he's trying to skip some lines maybe, but he basically just kicks the ball into the middle of the field. It gets picked off. The Sounders are set defensively, so it shouldn't be a huge problem, but it does give the ball back in their own end. And the Earthquakes loft in a cross. Doesn't look particularly dangerous, but for some reason, there's some miscommunication between Steph Fry and Alex Roldan, I suppose. So Steph does not come out to claim it. I watched this replay many times. I don't entirely understand. Maybe he didn't think he was going to get there. And if that's the case, he did get he maybe read it poorly, but in any case, he doesn't play it. And Christian Roldan, I think, actually does something reasonably sensible. Instead of trying to awkwardly head it, he tries to screen Amal Pellegrino. Unfortunately, Amal Pellegrino is like 6'10" and just sort of wraps his leg around Roldan and is able to kick it into essentially an empty net. It's a pretty ugly goal. I know it looks on paper, like when you're first watching it, it does seem like Christian Roldan gets pretty badly beat on there. On watching it again, I get what he was trying to do there. I don't necessarily, I put this one mostly on Fry for not claiming it and sort of creating this awkward situation where you have two defenders who aren't quite sure. I don't think they were expecting the ball to bounce. And so when it does bounce, they are sort of caught a little off guard. I don't know. Where do you chalk that one up?
To me, I've watched the replay a few times as well, and to me, it really looks to me like Fry is going to claim it, and Pellegrino just kind of heads it out of his grip. And it looks like Fry just does not really expect to see a man of that size going for the ball and being in a position you're probably not used to when you're a keeper, when you're going up for a ball, having guys being capable of heading it away. And so to me, it just looks like that really flusters Fry, and the rest unfolds as it does. In any case, I feel like if you're calling for that ball, you've got to go get it. Because I think if he doesn't call for that ball, I think that's probably dealt with. And I think 99 times out of 100 with a normal sized defender, a normal sized attacking player, Fry probably gets to that ball. But it's a bad play all around. It's Yemar's first pass was awful. His clearance was really bad.
Yeah, he had another chance to clear. He had a second chance to clear it too. That's right.
Yeah. I would need to watch again. Maybe this is too harsh, but it felt to me like he didn't necessarily need to head that ball away, that he could have chested it down and actually cleared it more effectively.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't hit at him very hard. So I would say that he had some option. You're talking about Yamar here. He probably had some options how to play that one.
Yeah. And maybe that's nitpicking. I don't know. The first pass is obviously the most egregious thing. Nobody's closing down the cross, which I'm always hesitant to be super critical in that situation, because from my recollection, the decision is, do I come out and challenge to this cross and let my guy get in behind and, give him the opportunity to get open in space going towards the end line? Or do I just assume that the other defenders have their man taken care of? So I do think that it's two guys making pretty bad mistakes and other guys just being put in really kind of no-win situations and maybe looking bad as a result. But just the kind of goal that to me is extremely frustrating to watch, in large part because it's not a goal I expect the Sounders to give up.
Yeah, I mean, this is the Sounders have been all season, really, other than all season, one of, if not the top defensive teams. Yeah. And, they're coming off 2 straight shutouts. They look good. They've only given up, 2 goals a few times this year. And to their credit, they came back relatively quickly within 5 or 6 minutes, scored the equalizer on a little bit on a fluky goal. Although one where they create their luck, I think we can say. Essentially, It starts with a free kick. It doesn't get dealt with very well. They put in a shot. The clearance ends up essentially ricocheting off of Pedro de la Vega's chest into the path of Jordan Morris, who very alertly hits it very hard on the first time. It's sort of at the goalkeeper, but it's hit with enough power that the goalkeeper can't really do anything other than try to throw his body in front of it. It gets past him. He scores. Tie game. Sort of it seemed to calm things down. And then the Sounders come back and they score another one on a really well taken, I thought a really well taken goal again by Jordan Morris. Not a great cross necessarily from Paul Rothrock. It gets deflected, but Morris is able to sort of control it off of his knee, I believe, and then just sort of poke it, redirect it into the goal. Both goals, what I liked a lot about those goals, they're sort of strikers' goals. And, we've talked a lot about whether or not Jordan Morris is a number 9. And part of the reason I think people are skeptical of him as a number 9 is he scores a fair number of goals, but he doesn't score a lot of these types of goals, which are really strikers' goals. Goals where you're sort of making something out of nothing. It's just sort of instinctual. You're relying on your reactions. There's not a lot of thought that goes into it. And he doesn't put himself in those positions to score those goals a ton, but he did have 2 of them in this one. And Jordan, I got to say, he was playing with a fire. He was playing with sort of an energy that we don't see all the time from him. He was arguing with the referees. He was exuding energy, which it wasn't sort of slump shoulders. It wasn't negative energy. It was like, let's go. It looked like a different player, frankly. I saw some people very oddly criticizing him, I guess because he didn't finish a chance that he had late in the game. But the Sounders are in this game, let's be really clear, almost exclusively because of Jordan Morris's play. He was involved in virtually every dangerous chance they had, either by making a run to free up space for someone else, or being part of the buildup, or being on the end of a chance. He was by far the most influential player on the Sounders in this game. If he's not on the field, I am willing to say they probably lose this game 1-0, 2-0, and it's an even more frustrating result than it is. That said, he gets them up 2-1. And really, I thought they weren't cruising, but they were reasonably comfortable. Like, they were the ones creating more of the danger, even though if there was a frustration, and I think this is a fair frustration, they didn't possess the ball. They didn't do a very good job of sort of just grinding down San Jose. They sort of were getting out on the counterattack, and they were creating chances, which is good, but they weren't doing the kind of just grinding down. Like, I get that's good. I think that's the term I'm looking for. They were not giving San Jose this sort of sense of, what are we doing here? And that's sort of what they did against Sporting Kansas City on Sunday. That's what they've done against, when they've looked, especially when they're playing against opponents who are worse than them. And they have let's be real. They're where they are right now because they've done a great job of beating teams like the Earthquakes, especially at home, over the last few months.
The knock has been that they're flat track bullies, right? The knock has been that they can't beat the teams ahead of them in the table.
Right, exactly. And that said, somehow they managed. They do have a few of these frustrating losses, but it's, I don't know. The figuring out the Sounders this year has been a real futile effort, I think. But they were creating chances, and they weren't necessarily, like I said, it didn't seem like they were in control, like really firmly in control, but they did seem like the team that was more likely to score again. And they had a few really good chances to score. Around the 63rd minute, Georgie Monongu and Reed Baker Whiting come in for Pedro de la Vega and Paul Rothrock. I don't know. I was okay with those moves. De La Vega, this was his longest outing of the season, of the entire season, 63 minutes, which is not a lot, but I thought he looked okay in the first half. He was not super influential during his close to 20 minutes of the second half. And I was totally okay with him coming out. Rothrock also wasn't doing a whole lot in the second half. Monongu seemed, on paper, to me, seems like exactly the kind of player you want to bring in against the Earthquakes. And every time he got the ball on the wing, there was danger created. So I think, like, he brought energy. He does not have the refinement that you would like, but he's still, he came very close to connecting with Jordan on a cross that would have sealed it. He had a couple other good looks. I was just rewatching this almost right before we recorded, and I will say there was one big frustrating moment with Georgie Monongu, and this is on the play where Josh Atencio sort of dribbles the length of the field almost and creates a chance for himself. And he had, in real time, it felt like maybe he should have passed it off to Morris. I feel very comfortable watching the replay that passing to Morris was not the right play there. Morris was well marked. I think Atencio probably took advantage of that and tried to beat Danielle near post. What's frustrating, though, is Monongu plays himself offside almost at no point does he get himself into an onside position and make himself available. And if he had, they didn't have the numbers to defend him.
Yeah.
Even if he's onside, it forces everyone to sort of react differently to him. But he's so far offside that I don't even think the defense pays attention to him because he is a non-factor in the play.
Yeah, and that's a weird one because it's like there are a lot of things where you see a younger, more inexperienced player do something, and it's like, well, they'll adjust to the league, but like the offside rule is the same everywhere, right? So that's definitely a frustrating one. And yeah, I mean, the choice there, if he's onside, is either you have an unmarked guy at the far post,
right,
or you have one guy on Morris, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely, that's definitely frustrating. I mean, he's so fun to watch in a way that is going to become very frustrating, I think.
If he's still doing this stuff in, frankly, in a few more weeks, it might cease to be fun.
Yeah. I made a joke in the Discord that he's basically playing like a FIFA player career because he's taking everybody on.
Yeah.
He's trying some really ostentatious stuff. And I'm totally fine with that being his game. And it's like, I think the kind of dynamic player that the Sounders have been missing and that they can really benefit from bringing in off the pitch or bringing off the bench. But you have to have a tangible outcome at some point. Like you have to get an assist, you have to get a goal. He did, I think, I thought he had a couple good passes. Like you said, he had one that it ended up just getting caught by the keeper, but it was a sort of floated ball to the far post.
Yeah, that's the one I was talking about where he was playing it to Morris.
Yeah. So it's not like he is hopeless with the final ball at all. And I think that there is some segment of the fan base that feels like, yeah, he's a lot of fun to watch, but he just can't do anything once he gets into the final third. And I don't think that that's true necessarily, but you do have to have output. Like you have to at least have set up a shot.
Yeah. And he's, and let's be real, he's getting close to 200 total minutes in MLS play. Yeah. It's not like we're still very early. He's got basically 2 games of experience at the MLS level. He's there's time. I don't want to rush to judgment. And he's 22. It's entirely possible that, although it does seem telling. It seems telling that this is a guy who was not on the roster 3 weeks ago, and he is now the first option off the bench, which either tells me the Sounders are not really feeling great about their bench options, or they are maybe made a mistake by not signing him earlier. Now, I think that was an organizational decision. I'm not pinning that on one person. All indications I have heard is that they sort of didn't want to bring him in any earlier than they had to because they wanted to keep open the possibility of bringing someone in from outside the organization. But I'm a little skeptical that they didn't know they weren't going to sign someone until like literally after the window closed. So it feels like maybe they should have brought him in earlier. I don't necessarily think he would have changed any results, but he would have gotten a little bit more time with the first team. I don't know. That's not, I don't want to get too bogged down in that, but it's at least a little concerning that he is clearly the best option off the bench. And somewhat related to that, the Sounders didn't rotate this lineup almost at all from Sunday. They were on 2 days rest. They started 9 of the same 11 players. The 2 changes they made were Nuhu for Reed Baker Whiting and Pedro de la Vega for Monongu. And it did feel a little bit like the Sounders were sluggish. It did not feel like they were sharp. Even if you were to make one more change, I think making a change in the central midfield, probably playing Atencio, maybe for Obed, maybe for Christian. But and I did not think Obed had a great game in this one. It felt like an obvious, almost, especially in hindsight, seeing how Josh played. Josh, I thought, looked really good, really energetic. Yeah. As you would expect, he hadn't, he hasn't played much. He hasn't played a ton since the Crew game. It felt like maybe this would have been a good game to start. And I don't quite understand, Brian has gotten better about subbing early. Like he is routinely making subs around the 65th minute at this point. That's great. I think that's a positive. but he is almost even getting more dead set on a core group of starters, 8 or 9 guys who are going to start no matter what. And maybe it bit him a little bit in this one.
Yeah, and I think I defended the decision to keep Obed in the lineup with no game this weekend. And I still think it was defensible.
It's defensible for sure.
I do wonder why he's playing 82 minutes, right? Like, if you're gonna start him again on that short a rest,
right? Maybe
give him 60 minutes, right? Because I think if Atencio comes in at the same time as Reed Baker-Whiting and George Munungu, that he probably has more of an impact. I mean, he would definitely have more of an impact on the game, right? Because he would get another 20 minutes.
Or maybe he comes in with Reed and you give Munungu, you let Rothrock stay on the field a little bit longer.
Yeah.
I don't know. It felt like I didn't think the subs were necessarily wrong. I just and I know Brian took a lot of heat from the fan base about his subbing pattern. I felt more that was the starting lineup that could have used some rotation. That said, Jordan has, I think that maybe the most surprising sort of pseudo Iron Man that the Sounders have is Jordan Morris, who has basically played every single game the Sounders have played over the last 4 months, 23 games in that time. He's averaging like almost 85 minutes a game, and he does not look any worse for wear.
No, I mean, he's still running hard at the end of every game. He's still, to me, looked like the most likely player to score late in the game.
Absolutely.
It's pretty impressive. He's a guy who he's obviously had 2 major injuries, and so it's probably not accurate to say that he's been a super durable player, but when he hasn't been recovering from one of those injuries, I think he's been a reasonably durable player.
But I mean, he's had his fair share of hamstring injuries. He's had a fair share of like muscle type of injuries. And, you knock on wood, you never know when that stuff's going to come back, but he just seems like he's in so much, feels like a much more durable player right now than he's ever been.
To me, he looks fitter. Just generally, like he it felt at times over the last couple of years like maybe he was a little too bulked up.
I could see that,
and I think he's found like a good balance for his body of like he's still much stronger than he was in 2016 2017 for example, but he doesn't look like quite as much of a brick house as he did maybe in 2021. And I mean, I think also, as I love to say, players are injury prone until they're not, they're durable until they're not.
Right,
so
yeah.
Hopefully we're not, tempting fate here, but I do think that there's something to the idea that guys sometimes just kind of learn how to take care of themselves a little better, and just kind of grow into their careers and get to know their bodies more. And so hopefully that's the case, because I think that Jordan's value is obviously he scores goals. I think he's done really well with hold-up play, all the other less glamorous forward work. But I think that being able to know that he's going to be able to start and play a lot of minutes when Raul has never been that guy. Clint Dempsey was certainly never that guy. Obo was, I mean, he wasn't necessarily that guy either. It's really been since Freddie Montero that the Sounders have had a striker that you felt pretty confident was going to be able to play pretty much every game, and it's a nice luxury to have.
And it should absolutely be mentioned that he is on a easily the best scoring form of his career, the most extended scoring form of his career. It was like 2 months ago that I said something similar, where it's like, oh, we've never seen Jordan go on a 2-month run like he's on right now. It's now been 4 months. He's got 16 goals, 3 assists in that 4 months. He's averaging almost a goal contribution per game. It's like 8.89 goal contributions per 90 minutes. He is currently tied for 5th in MLS in non-penalty goals. He's got 13. He is got an outside chance of tying the single season record for MLS goals, which is 17 for the Sounders. He's got a maybe better chance of becoming the first Sounder to score 20 all competition goals. He's currently on 17. There's a chance that he will pass Raul Ruidiaz this year in terms of the Sounders franchise scoring record. He's on 83. He's 3 behind Raul Ruidiaz. So, this could be really a breakout year for Jordan Morris in a lot of ways. And it's so funny because I'm reminded of this. People were sort of critiquing the Sounders signing him to a extension when we were sort of going through, okay, what mistakes have the Sounders made recently? And more than a few people have pointed out, well, I don't know why you signed Jordan to a 5-year contract. He's going to just get worse every year of his contract. Well, last year he tied his career high for goals. This year he set his career high for goals. He's still not, I don't think he's 30 yet. I think he turns 30 next season.
He's 29. Yeah.
He's potentially got, there's an entirely realistic scenario where he is productive all the way through the end of his contract. And I don't know, right now it looks like he's doing everything you could ask for as a number 9.
Yeah, he has equaled Raul's single season best for non-penalty goals. He's 3 shy of Oba's single season best for non-penalty goals. And he doesn't have the supporting cast Oba had in the attack.
No, he definitely did not.
I know people get tired of me talking about Jordan as a number 9, but I do not understand what else he has to do.
No, I get the only argument I suppose for moving Jordan to the wing is there's this belief, which I don't think is really supported by evidence, but there's a belief that he'll be just as productive coming off the wing as he is as a number 9. I don't know that that's true. I am skeptical of that assumption. I can only hope that if they, don't get me wrong, if they can go out and sign a really great number 9, I think you can justify moving Jordan to the wing. Yeah. But I think you can just as easily go out and find a very good winger who supports Morris. Thank you for listening to the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network, which now includes Nos Arietes, Lobbing Scorchers, and the Cooler Guild. We've been independent since August of 2023, but need your support to make sure it continues. Although this podcast is free, it's only made possible by your continued support. Memberships start as low as $25 a year, which not only helps make podcasts like this one happen, but also gets you access to everything we produce. If you're able to support us at higher levels, starting at $75 a year, you gain access to a host of other perks, most notably entry into our members-only Discord, where the smartest, funniest, and most engaged commenters share their thoughts and ideas. To find out more, just visit sounderatheart.com and click the subscribe button in the top right corner. Thanks for listening.
I think that the case for signing a striker and having it be the right decision is we can get a guy that's good enough to offset the loss in production, because we have a lot of evidence that Jordan Morris is going to produce at one level on the wing and another level centrally. We have a long, many, many games of evidence that is true, that he's going to score more goals playing centrally. So you have to offset that, and you also have to offset the fact that his skill set is probably going to age more poorly on the wing than it will at striker. Right. So you might get fewer productive years out of him. And that's not to say that there's not a number 9 out there that can make those trade-offs worth it, right?
Right.
But this idea that a marginal upgrade on Jordan means that that's the move to make, I don't understand that belief, because you're
and I do think that there's sort of become this accepted fact that Jordan is not a number 9. Of course, Jordan isn't a number 9. It's almost a given among a certain sort of pundit class. Frankly, I think even internally within the Sounders, I think there's still people in the organization that it's like, well, obviously we got to go get a number 9. Is that obvious? I don't know that it is. I would hope that the Sounders are giving some second thought to that, because he is playing. Look, if Raul Ruidiaz, if we had a 29-year-old striker not named Jordan Morris putting up the numbers that Jordan Morris is putting up right now, there would not be a question that it was that he's the guy. It's just just take his name out of it and look at the numbers. It is if we had another, we have never, I don't know that the Sounders have ever had a striker going on a run like he is on, where he's got 19 goal contributions in 23 games. I don't know that Raul ever did that. I haven't checked, so maybe he did, but I'm sure no one else. I don't think Oba ever went on a run like that. I know Eddie Johnson never went on a run like that, and these were players that we never questioned as a number 9.
Yeah, I think that's the thing for me, that it's like, look, if you want to say, I think we can do better at that position, fine. Like, obviously you can. There are obviously better strikers in MLS than Jordan Morris. But the idea that he is not a striker and that he shouldn't be playing there and that he's being played out of position is crazy. It is absolutely crazy to me. If you move him to the wing, that's where he's out of position. In 2016, Jordan Morris in MLS probably should have been playing on the wing. He didn't have the physicality yet. He had better breakaway speed, and he was able to lean on that pretty heavily as he got accustomed to the league. That happens a lot in the sport, where younger guys play on the wing until they kind of grow into their game and then move back centrally. That's not uncommon. Nobody ever questioned whether Thierry Henry was a 9, right? Even though he started on the wing and moved centrally. I think it's just something people have decided to double down on that is no longer supported by any kind of evidence.
I do think there's something else. I think people want to see him. And obviously the irony is that he's got a bunch of playoff goals. He's got goals in big games. He doesn't have a bunch of goals against Portland. He doesn't have a bunch of goals against LAFC. I suppose it's literally that simple. Like, score a couple goals against Portland, score a couple goals against LAFC, you're our number 9. Like, it could be like, I do think there is a illogic to that kind of thinking. And maybe that's what, like, let's say he goes out and has a hat trick in the season finale against the Portland. Let me manifest that into reality. Jordan Morris is going to score a hat trick against Portland in the season finale. All the questions about whether or not he's a number 9 go away, and we move on our merry way. But this ended up being a pretty significant diversion. We should probably talk about where the game fell apart in this one. Yeah. And that is a play that it doesn't come from nothing, but it doesn't really come from something either.
Yeah, good way to put it.
It's a little bit of possession that San Jose has. They move the ball into the wing, and basically Jeremy Ebobisse is able to get a head start on Christian Roldan, who tries to close down the cross. This is the kind of play that happens a half dozen times in a game where a winger, like Christian, I don't really blame Christian for not closing down that cross better, because he's never really, like, he's not in a dangerous position, frankly. But what happened, the play gets made is that Paul Marie starts out on the far top of the penalty area, and Alex Roldan is sort of aware that he's there, but he's more focused on where the ball is than where Marie is. And Marie is able to sort of like ghost around him and get goal side, which you can't let him do. You can't let him get goal side. But really, to me, the most egregious thing about this play, the Sounders, both center backs are in a position that they should be able to either cut out the cross or impede Marie's run so that he's not able to just go directly to the spot that he wants to get to. Yeimar specifically is in a position where if he just takes a couple more steps, he should be able to cut out that cross. He does not cut out that cross. Marie gets inside Alex Roldan. And then the other thing I've watched a bunch of times, I'm not quite sure what Steph Fry is reading, because he dives the wrong way. He's got the near post covered. He almost dives out of the way of the shot. I don't know why, like, what about, and maybe I'm just not, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not, Steph Fry clearly sees something that I'm not seeing, but I don't know what he sees that he is convinced that Paul Marie is going to hit it back to the middle of the goal, because to me it seems like the danger is very clearly the near post. Steph Fry is not on the near post at that point.
No, he's not, and he had been, which makes it makes it a lot more frustrating. He definitely had that covered. Another, just I think, really frustrating but uncharacteristic goal for them to
it's
give
the
up.
kind of this is the exact kind of play that a defense like the Sounders, and Brian Schmetzer said this, they drill this exact kind of thing all the time.
Yeah, because it's the kind of goal you just can't give up. It has to be, because it is the kind of goal that you can't give up, because it's the kind of goal you can't give up.
Right.
It's one of those things. It's playground stuff.
Right. Exactly. This is the exact kind of goal. The first goal, that happens sometimes. Sometimes there's a miscommunication. Sometimes there's a play where you get boxed out. You're trying to box out a guy and the guy's 6'10" and he reaches his foot around you. Look, it's an ugly play, but it happens.
Yeah.
This is the exact kind of play that good defenses they don't give that goal up, because it is a textbook kind of attacking play that you can practice against. There is nothing unexpected that happens in that play. Like Paul Marie, maybe you can say makes a slightly clever run because he sort of fakes one way and he curls around Alex. This is the exact kind of run that players are coached to make and defenses are coached to stop. It's infuriating to watch it unfold.
Yeah. This is the kind of goal that Chris Wondolowski made a career out of scoring.
Right.
Paul Marie is not Chris Wondolowski.
He is not. No.
Paul Marie is not a forward. Paul Marie is a defender scoring this goal. It's crazy. It's crazy to allow a goal like this. And I think the best I can do is that this is the kind of goal that a team that is extremely tired gives up.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's not a satisfying excuse, because there's no reason to have a bunch of tired players out there.
Right.
It's very frustrating. And also, I mean, John Bell's on the field, right? Like, it's not like everyone in the defense was exhausted, but I think most of the people culpable for the goal were exhausted. And it's a real gut punch, because like you said, it's not like San Jose hadn't done anything, but they hadn't done anything of note. Like,
no,
I felt extremely comfortable at that point in the game. I did not see any way they were scoring a goal at that point in the game,
unless it came from the only way I was worried, to the degree that I'm always worried about a 1-goal lead late in games, because I don't know, they get a free kick and all of a sudden they bang in a free kick, or a weird penalty happens or whatever, right? You're always nervous about something like that happen. But this was the kind of, like, the Sounders were not under a lot of pressure. They were not, they did not have a lot of possession. They were outpossessed 60-40 basically in the second half, which is bad. The Earthquakes are the least, or one of the least possession heavy teams in the league. So to give up that much possession is annoying. But it wasn't like San Jose was putting the Sounders under any significant pressure at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you want to see for the Sounders, because the Sounders at a certain point made the decision that they were going to try to kill off the game, which I think is totally justifiable. It's not like they stopped trying to attack at all, but they definitely went into protect mode, right?
Well, they were drop guys and then look for a counter.
But if you're going to, when you do have possession and what you're trying to do is kill off a game, you need to make the other team work.
Right.
You have to make them chase shadows, make them tire themselves out. That's the whole point of keeping the ball in a game state like that. And it just didn't feel like the Sounders were doing that at all.
At all. No,
like,
I would be willing to bet they did not have any 10 pass sequences after the 65th minute.
Yeah. Either just go back into a shell and absorb pressure and maybe look to spring a counter, or have some purposeful possession. But it's like they just were kind of in this halfway between mode where, they didn't want to fully sit back, but they also were content letting San Jose have the ball. And that's fine until it's not. Like, ultimately, I think the failure, there's plenty of blame to go around, but I think ultimately the failure is letting San Jose score the most basic ass goal you're ever going to see.
Right. Yeah. And it's,
and
it's a costly too. The thing that's really frustrating about it is, sure, there's a temptation to, okay, it's 2 points, two points, right?
Yeah.
But it's not, like this playoff race will 2 points. I guarantee wherever they finish, they could be finishing higher if they had 2 more points. Maybe it's third and they could have been second. Maybe it's eighth and they could have been seventh. It could be anything in between there, but I guarantee you 2 points is going to end up making a difference. And hey, if they run the table from here on out, maybe you chalk it up and you go, okay, well, whatever. Like, you can always point to a game, but more likely scenario is that they're going to get somewhere between 6 and 10 points in these last few games. And these 2 points are going to be huge. Like, absolutely. They could be I mean, if it ends up being the difference between the 5th and 4th seed, I think that's almost a worst case scenario, because that's the biggest, to me, that's the biggest sort of gap in where you're finished, because you're either hosting 2 games in the first round or you're going on the road in 2 games in the first round. And if we learned anything from the first year of this best of 3 series, is that being at home is a huge advantage in the first round. So I don't know. It's really frustrating they lost these 2 points. It's really frustrating that and I guess we should talk about this too. This is now the 4th game this year where they have dropped points late in for a home game.
Yeah.
Do you make anything out of that? And I will add the caveat here that they have 5 1-goal victories on the road. All of those victories came where they were having to hold a late lead. So they're clearly capable of doing it, but they have not done it at all at home. They have 2 1-goal wins at home. Both of those games featured late winners. Anyway, is this another statistical quirk, or is there something to this?
I think probably it's a statistical quirk, but I'm inclined to believe that maybe there is an explanation for this one more so than the San Jose flukiness, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
If all of their late dropped points at home were similar, I would be maybe a little more inclined to think it's a trend. But the RSL game, they had been getting stomped for a significant amount of time.
Yeah, and the Rapids game was kind of the same thing.
Yeah, like those were games where they were hanging on. This was not that kind of game. What was the other one where they?
The other game was Vancouver, where they gave up a late penalty.
Right.
Which was maybe more similar to this one, where Vancouver was not in that game except for the fact that the Sounders couldn't score, and then they just sort of gave away a late penalty senselessly.
Yeah. That one's coming back to me now, unfortunately. And I do think that was similar to the Vancouver game. And like you said, the San Jose game, in that they weren't holding back the flood. It wasn't a dam bursting kind of situation. It was a goal coming from not a whole lot of danger, in a game where the Sounders looked pretty comfortable. I think that in this one, at least, I do think that fatigue was probably a factor to some degree, and just not having the focus late on that allowed them to allow a run like that and a goal like that. But I don't know. It's so frustrating to not have something to point to, because those 8 points are huge.
It's literally the difference between being in first, tied with the Galaxy in first, or being in 5th.
Yeah, absolutely. And I especially like the RSL game, that Vancouver game, those games came at a time when people just really needed some positivity. I think if they beat RSL, people feel a lot better about this team now. I think if they hold on in that game, because the Sounders hadn't turned the corner in a perceptible way at that point. Right. The Vancouver game, same kind of deal. And so,
in fact, I think those games were back-to-back home games. They're at least back-to-back home games.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And I think if the vibes are better at that point in the year and their team is more confident, do they go on this run a little early and earlier and put themselves in a better position? So it's very frustrating. I have a feeling that if there is a cause, it is occupying Brian Schmetzer's thoughts pretty much 24/7, trying to figure out what that cause is, because it's just not a thing you can be doing. It's
not.
It's so frustrating, and I think if they win this game, it's really tempting to feel really, really good about this team. And this was just a reminder that they do have some problems. And I think it's important not to look too much into that, right? Because like LAFC dropped points to Austin, the Galaxy lost to the Timbers.
The Rapids got run. The Rapids got run at Sporting Kansas City.
Yeah, I mean, bad teams beat good teams in MLS all the time. And the Sounders didn't even lose this game, right? They just dropped points. This is just the kind of shit that happens in this league. And you just kind of have to deal with it to some degree. But there has been so much, well, that's just the kind of shit that happens in this league this season.
This year.
I don't blame people for being sick of it. I'm sick of it. And I think from an analytical standpoint, I'm willing to chalk it up to just one of those things. But from, as a fan, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of watching this kind of stuff.
I have not gone back and checked this, but I am pretty sure, like, I assure you, the Sounders have never dropped so many points on late equalizers as they had in a season. They may have done it more times this year than they had at home in their entire history, Frank. Like, it's happening whether or not there's a analytical part of it, we don't even need to get into that, but it's absolutely infuriating. And I like the analytics of part of it probably says, look, goals come at all points in the game. There's nothing more significant about doing it in the 89th minute than doing it in the 50th minute. But it's a whole lot more frustrating. It's a whole lot more frustrating, and it sucks. And I would really like it to stop. That said, if the Sounders feel like they need to add a insurance goal, I'm fine with that. But man, it's annoying. This was an annoying one, and it's made even more annoying because they don't have a game this weekend, so they have 10 days off, and they're gonna have to watch all the teams that are around them in the playoffs are gonna be playing games this weekend, and invariably one or two of them are gonna win, and the Sounders are they're gonna lose ground either from below or above, or maybe both. They could very easily, the next time the Sounders play, they could be in 7th place. I believe that's the farthest they can drop before they. Yeah, I think they can drop all the way to, I think, to 7th next time they play. They're going to be playing home against Houston. That is a huge, huge game. I mean, almost literally must-win game. Not from a making the playoffs perspective. The Sounders are going to make the playoffs. That much is almost guaranteed at this point. But where they finish is very much up in the air. And if they want to, and the goal, I think, should be finishing 4th. And if they have any hope of finishing 4th, they absolutely have to win this Houston game. They probably need to get 2 or 3 points from the 2 road games against the Rapids and Vancouver. And they absolutely will have to win the Portland game in the season finale. Like, that game, the nightmare scenario, I suppose, is that the 4-5 spot is on the line in the Portland game, and these two teams are playing for that 4-5 spot, and the Sounders out. But that's like the best case scenario. Like, if the Sounders are playing for the 4-5 spot in the season finale, that might be the best case scenario, because I don't think there's a real plausible path to getting higher than 4th at this point.
Probably not. I mean, it's possible if they run the table. It's definitely
possible, somehow, but I don't think it's.
But it doesn't seem likely.
No,
which sucks, because I think if they hang on to that game last night, I'm almost betting on it. It's really bad, and I would say I don't care if the Sounders had wrapped up the Supporters Shield a month ago. Beating Portland at home in that finale is a must-win game.
No, it is, so but I just don't. It would be nice if there wasn't so much writing on it.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm saying, right? Is it's like you have to beat Portland at home. Finally, right? This can't go on like this.
No.
And the fact that it's not just that writing on it, but really critical playoff positioning, it's just so frustrating that it's gotten to this point. after I had started to feel really, really good about the team again.
Yeah. I mean, I had talked about in my last column, I had talked about how, okay, it feels like they've sort of turned a corner, because Sporting Kansas City was almost exactly the kind of team that San Jose was, except for better. San Jose is a worse version of Sporting Kansas City. The Sounders basically dismantled Sporting Kansas City, and then they come around and they definitely did not dismantle San Jose. I mean, they were frankly, based on the run of play, like they were maybe a little lucky to even get 2-2. Like if Jordan doesn't score those 2 goals, I don't think they find another goal in this one.
Probably not. No, I mean they had some decent chances, I guess. The ball that Leva put in that Yamar almost got to.
Yeah, I mean,
was a good one.
that would have been pretty sweet.
Jordan did have a decent chance that Madungu helped set up.
Yeah, I mean,
they had, but they weren't great chances.
No, they weren't great chances.
Like they were knocking on the door all night, you know. Yeah, I still think this is a good team. This result doesn't change that. I think that the Sporting Kansas City result, the Columbus result to some degree, I guess, those are much more indicative of the kind of team this is. But this was a reminder that they ride the edge.
They are just kind of absolutely riding the. They are absolutely riding the edge. They are absolutely playing. That's why you want to make a move in the summer, right? Is so you can create a little bit more wiggle room. And I think there's I don't want to catastrophize or anything. I'm just trying to be realistic about what the last 4 games looks like, and it looks a lot different if they have 2 more points than what they have. The West does feel relatively wide open. I hope the Sounders get a chance to play the Galaxy in the playoffs. I'll just say that. Like I am not like I will take the Sounders' chances against the Galaxy. I'll take the Sounders' chances against, frankly, anyone in the West. I'm not looking forward to playing LAFC, but I feel like they might be due.
Yeah. The thing with the Sounders that is so frustrating, and it's exciting too at the same time, is that I think they can beat any team in MLS. There is a reality where the Sounders go into the playoffs as the 5 seed and win the MLS Cup. And I don't think it's that far-fetched, right?
I mean,
don't think it's
sure. It's why you watch, right? It's
There's also a reality where they lose the play-in game, because they can also lose to any team in MLS, and the game is going to look pretty much the same. Whether like every win on the way to the MLS Cup is going to look more or less the same as that game where they lose the play-in game,
right?
And that's just who they are. And I hope it's not who they are next year. There are a lot of things I like about this team. I think that they are fundamentally a good team. I don't think they're far away, but they have got to give themselves some breathing room.
Games like this are a real reminder of how their limitation. Like we kind of ran through the list today, but it's a good reminder that this is a team that is flawed and has a lot of room for improvement. And we'll see. We will see. That's probably a good place. We've gone on now for an hour talking about this game, essentially.
It's like an old school No Saudietas.
Yeah, exactly. I think next week we're gonna do a mailbag episode to sort of fill things in, so you can put that on your calendar. I have started trying to do more. I did an episode of sound bites earlier this week that you may have caught. So I don't know. I might try to start doing those again. But thanks to everyone who's been a subscriber. We have enjoyed a pretty solid renewal rate. We're now about a month past the year anniversary, so I feel pretty good about being able to say that the renewal rates are trending in a positive way. Probably, I don't have exact numbers, but I would guess in the 90% rate. So I'm stoked about that. Things are so. Thank you to everyone who is making this happen. We cannot do this without reader, listener support. Thanks to our sponsor, Full Pull Wines. Thanks to producer Lickett. I am Jeremiah Shine, signing off for Aaron Campo. This is Nos Audietis. You'll never yet alone.
We love you. Let's win another one.